Japan up close.
I think a lot of change happens gradually and then very suddenly. So things take a long time to start moving and start stirring, but then once you hit a certain inflection point, things just take off in a really exciting way. And what I've seen personally in the past 10 years is that there's been a lot of growth in both the ecosystem for startups and for business disruptors, and also a lot of new exciting startups who've taken on challenges from circular economy to energy, and all kinds of healthcare, all kinds of other industries. So I think it's been a really exciting 10 years for startups and innovation. Where I'm most active and most familiar is around social entrepreneurship and social innovation. And in this, I'd say even 5 years, there's been a whole host of activity that has helped to grow the ecosystem for social entrepreneurs, and that is now supporting a lot of pioneers who are taking on big social and environmental problems from a business perspective. So I'm very optimistic. And just looking back at history, we see a lot of the biggest tech innovations and a lot of the most exciting things that have made an impact globally have come from Japan. So I think Japan has a very rich history in technology and innovation. And now we're seeing a new wave of social entrepreneurs and startups who are making big moves here. Japan has so much talent, financial resources, technology. It's a market or a global leader in many ways. And historically here, what we've seen is that social and environmental problems are traditionally, or they were thought to be issues of the government and the non-profit sector and so on. But what we've seen recently is a much bigger shift towards societal value created by companies. And that's something that we noticed when we started Social Innovation Japan back in 2017. Myself and my co-founders came from very different backgrounds. So I came more from an NGO non-profit background. My other co-founders came from tech and from the startup world. And so together we kind of crossed these different silos within society, and we were all united by this passion for social and environmental change. So that's the kind of backdrop. And what we saw is that there was a lot of activity, a lot of really innovative and creative individuals who were making a lot of waves here in terms of healthcare, energy, environment, all kinds of sectors, but not so many people outside of Japan knew what was going on. So one of our goals was to try and raise the profile of these people who are doing incredible things, and also to build community of social change makers who were from the business sector and other sectors as well. And what we do now is after 4 years, we've really boiled down to 4 key focus areas. Firstly, we create our own social innovation. So we create products and services that address social and environmental needs. We also do consulting and corporate impact related to sustainability, SDGs, ESG, and all of those kinds of issues. We also do unconventional training, development, and learning. So we do leadership training, and we do a lot of workshops and seminars for all kinds of people, both in Japan and elsewhere, focusing on these important issues. And finally, we do community building. So we do a lot of events, conferences, and opportunities for people to connect, because that's really where a lot of the magic happens. So that's where we are now, and that's roughly where we came from. It's been quite the journey, and we have a lot of aspirations for the future as well. MyMizu is a crowdsourced and co-created platform of water points in Japan and around the world. And the big idea here is that we're eliminating the need for plastic bottles, and specifically water bottles. So if you have a reusable bottle like this, you can access any of our 200,000 locations around the world. And that way, you don't have to buy a bottle of water everywhere you go. You can just carry your own reusable item and refill at our refill points. And so this is an example of what we call circular economy. It's an economy that doesn't rely on waste. So we are eliminating the very idea of waste from our societal processes and so on. And we established this not just to tackle the problem of plastic waste, but it was an important way, or a creative way, to engage people in sustainability. And I say this because I've been working in this field for over a decade now, and it's often difficult to really engage people when you're talking about very abstract or far away issues like CO2 emissions, methane emissions, sea level rise, coral bleaching. These are all very important things that are happening and things that we have to tackle, but it's also very distant. So we thought, how can we bring these really big and structural issues down to the everyday level? And that was the solution that we found was the plastic bottle. That's the way we can hook people into this conversation and then begin a broader journey towards a more sustainable future. So, and that was the backdrop. And in terms of the issue that we're facing, our main focus right now is Japan, although we do have users of the MyMizu platform, which is free. You can download it for free on your Android or iPhone across 50 countries. So we do have global reach, but our main focus is in Japan because the issue of plastic waste specifically is a big issue here. Japan is one of the biggest per capita consumers of plastic packaging. And so that's one of the first things that we're trying to solve in this specific context. So MyMizu is really, it is about reducing plastic bottle waste, but on a bigger level, it's about engaging people, about changing people's mindsets. And it's about developing new infrastructure by connecting existing infrastructure with our digital platform. And what I always say is MyMizu is not a service. We're not providing a service. We're building a service. We're building a movement together with the people in our community. So we have hundreds of thousands of people using MyMizu, and it's all crowdsourced. So we have people adding data every single day from around the world. And so by doing that, we're co-creating a more sustainable, a more circular, and a more hopefully joyful and exciting future for all of us. So that's roughly where we are. One unique aspect of what we do is we have a network of businesses. So shops, cafes, restaurants, hotels across Japan. We have now over 1,700 of these places where you can go in and you can refill your bottle and leave. And so again, we're building this new ecosystem. It's a great way for local businesses to connect with new people, to get more foot traffic through the door, and so on. And one of the things that we do, which is quite unique, is that we work with a lot of different stakeholders. So we have official partnerships with city governments like Kobe City, which is renowned for its innovation and so on. We also work with global brands like Nike and Audi and Mitsubishi Chemical. And we also work with schools and universities because these are really the young people who will lead us into the next century and into these important times that we face. So that's where we are. That's roughly what we've achieved so far. Going forward, we do have very ambitious targets to increase or build our ecosystem even more. And we're also currently looking at how we can deploy this technology, deploy this concept that we have with things other than water. So this is perhaps the next phase is looking at a similar circular economy initiative system, but with a different product. And that way we can reach even more people and hopefully make a bigger impact. I've seen a lot of change in this past 10 years in the sustainability movement in Japan. One thing now that we see is the SDGs, the UN Sustainable Development Goals logo in a lot of different places. And that's actually very unique. We in Japan, we have a relatively high awareness of the SDGs. We also have very influential business groups like Keiranden, who are promoting SDGs and making it a high priority. And what is promising is that Japan has some of the oldest businesses in the world. And what's really interesting is speaking to many Japanese companies through the work that I do, have the privilege of really seeing how long-term these business leaders can think. You know, I was having a conversation the other day with a CEO of a well-known Japanese company, and he was saying that he's thinking what, 20, 30, 50 years ahead. And this is quite remarkable in a world which is really often defined by short-term goals and short-term metrics that we have to hit to maximize our shareholder value and so on. So I think long-termism in Japan is really helping in some ways, especially the business sector, build a more sustainable future. There's one other positive trend I would say is that social entrepreneurship, right? Entrepreneurship is when you build a new company, a new venture. Entrepreneurship is when you build a new initiative, a new program or something within an existing company or within an existing structure. And what's been really promising is seeing how many companies have these social entrepreneurs within their own companies who are creating new visions for where their company should go. And a lot of it is younger people. These younger people go into the companies with their ideals and their visions. And a lot of times I've seen these things do come true. So social entrepreneurship is a very exciting trend that I see. In terms of consumers, they're not as vocal as in many other countries, but sustainable consumers are growing in number, and they are growing in influence too. So in terms of market opportunity, market trends, there is an increase in sustainable consumption here for sure. And we see a rising role of youth. So this is the same across the world, and Japan is no exception. And there are many, many young people doing quite remarkable things. So yeah, there's many trends, and these are just some of the things that I'm seeing. I'm generally quite optimistic, but at the same time, there is a lot of work to do. And there's a lot of marketing, a lot of talk around sustainability in the business space and the government space. But we need really much more action. And our time window, our time frame for action is very limited. So we really need to take quite urgent action and have this renewed sense of urgency when it comes to sustainability in Japan. I think what the SDGs have done is they've provided a common operating system for people and organizations in different sectors to work together. So you'll have startups, you can have businesses, you can have government bodies who are all speaking the same language. And that is so critical. So for example, if a startup says, we're working on SDG 11, sustainable cities, then governments can say the same thing. Oh, we're actually working on number 11 too. And then another company can come in and say, oh, that's what we're doing too. And it creates this kind of fundamental ability for people to connect around these issues. So the SDGs definitely have made things easier in some way, and made communication especially a lot easier. But where we see challenges is when we talk about social change. Well, I like to think about things in the top-down, bottom-up, and middle-out framework, right? So we see SDGs are not just the SDGs. Governments, for example, are increasing legislation around very specific things in the environment, such as plastic waste and such as CO2 emissions. That's top-down. We're seeing bottom-up. Bottom-up means that we, the citizens, doing really remarkable things and taking on ownership to achieve the SDGs by ourselves. That means non-profits, governments, academia, everyone are doing things to achieve the SDGs now at the very local level. And then middle out, this is the piece of the puzzle that's not often talked about. But middle out is the connection between the top down, the legislators, the state, and the people. And those are the congregators, the people who bring people together, those who create case studies that can connect what's happening at the local level with the government level. So I'm seeing a lot of exciting stuff happening, top down, bottom up, middle out. But again, it's all about speed and scale. How quickly can we achieve the change that we need when we're talking about a green transition or about achieving the SDGs? One other thing that's also necessary is a lot of financing. Right? Yeah, it's great to have all these brilliant ideas, but we need the financial capital to back those ideas and make them happen. So again, it kind of ties down to the issue around urgency. We need to be urgent, but we also need to realize that social change is not a marathon, it's a sprint. And so whether you're a business, whether you're a government, whether you're a civil society actor, we need to have the long-termism to think, okay, if we take action today, what is the change that we want to create going forward? And what I'd say also is the SDGs is galvanizing the business community, right? This is no longer about, shall we make money or shall we do good things? They're basically one and the same now. And I would say that all SDGs related decisions are critical business decisions now. And a lot of businesses are waking up to the fact that they can't get away with not thinking about SDGs without consequence. So yeah, I'm seeing lots of exciting stuff happening because of the SDGs, but also because of this new action and this new wave of activity in the civil society space, government space, and private sector space. And one other thing, just to, just to add to this, is one of my favorite sayings in Japanese is pinch your chance ni. When you see a pinchy, a problem, you can see it as a problem, or you can see it as a chance, an opportunity. And what I would encourage more Japanese companies to do is see those problems in quotation marks as massive opportunities to get ahead of the pack, to build business value, but also to increase social value and environmental value too. So we're seeing a very fundamental shift in our society. But again, it's about speed and scale. How quickly can we get to where we need to be by 2030 and beyond? There are many things that Japan can teach the world about sustainability. Firstly, when you look at Japanese history, during the Edo period, during the Meiji period, Japan was a very circular society. There was actually very little waste, and almost all natural resources were really well looked after, really well used. So I'd say, first of all, when we're talking about a circular society, Japan in many ways is a model country, at least looking pre economic boom of the 1970s, 80s, and so on. What I would say, secondly, is there's a lot of concepts that have come from Japan, like mottainai, which have already gone global in many ways, and that have really become very popular with many sustainability related people around the world. So there are concepts like this that are really taking off in other countries too. And then there are the more traditional practices. There are traditional practices in agriculture, in many other parts of society that are environmentally friendly, but also that provide value to those in the community. And I'll give you an example. One of them is aigamo. Aigamo is the use of ducks instead of pesticides in rice harvest and so on, in rice agriculture and so on. And this is a way to, again, substitute the need for pesticides and so on. And you're also using natural resources like aigamo, these specific types of ducks, to increase your yield and have better crops and so on. There are so many of these practices across Japan, and looking into the Japanese story, that could be applied and that could be insights into other countries and other areas as well. And finally, what I'd say in terms of business is that there is a famous concept in Japan called Sampo Yoshi. Sampo Yoshi is a traditional business philosophy, and it means creating value for three parties: the buyer, the seller, and society. So every time, this Sampo Yoshi concept came from a group of merchants called the Omi Shonin, the Omi merchants, many years ago. And the idea was that every time they do business in a community, they would create value for the buyer, they'd create value for themselves, the seller, and then they would create value for the community. So again, it's people, purpose, profit. Everything is combined. And this has been existing in the Japanese philosophy, in the Japanese identity, for hundreds of years already. So Japan has the deep-seated ability and the history of doing business in a responsible way. And I think Japan could once again be a leader in responsible business too, as we go about building this new sustainable future. So I'd say, again, so many things to learn from Japan, not just Sampo Yoshi, but also traditional practices related to sustainability. And it really could be a model in many ways for other countries to follow.
Japan Up Close.